The sudden death of a West Michigan star athlete is creating awareness around West Michigan and actually around the world about sudden cardiac arrest.
Wes Leonard, a Fenville High School student, died on the basketball court minutes after making a game-winning shot just this past March.
Since then, the Spectrum Health Medical Group has been holding symposiums in schools across West Michigan to educate students, and now they're offering that same valuable information to the general public.
Dr. Daryl Elmucci is here with us today, an electrophysiologist with the Spectrum Health Medical Group. This is so fresh for people still because it was such a shocker when it happened. Can you tell us a little bit about sudden cardiac arrest? It almost seems weird to say in the same sentence with such a young man.
You know, sudden cardiac arrest is actually the biggest killer in the United States. Somewhere between 350 and 400,000 people die suddenly every year. The problem is there's often confusion between that and a heart attack. A heart attack is an abrupt blockage of a blood vessel, and that happens a lot and obviously is a big killer, but the most common is a sudden electrical short circuit of the heart, where the heart suddenly starts beating so quickly that it essentially stops pumping and you don't have enough blood to get to the brain and the rest of your organs. And it's awful, and it can happen suddenly without warning. It happens most frequently in people with underlying heart problems, but can happen in people that are ostensibly healthy as well.
And seemingly so healthy and tough to screen for too.
You know, it is. If you take all comers who die suddenly, the majority of them have never had any known heart problems. With that said, if you have a history of heart problems, a family history of heart problems, you're much more likely to die suddenly. But there are so many people that just out of the blue this happens for, and screening, while very helpful, isn't always the only answer.
That sounds a little bit scary because you don't always detect it, and it can happen to a lot of different people. So what should you know about being at risk for something like this? Or what should parents do in the case of a young man where you think, wow, this could never happen to someone so young?
Right, and so healthy.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I think really there's a twofold approach. Number one is you have to look for some warning signs, and for people that have any history of heart disease that I mentioned, or if you have a history of unexplained passing out, you have a history of heart palpitations, heart racing, you develop bad chest pains when you exercise, those are all warning factors that occur before an event very often. And if you have any of those, or your child has those, it's time to seek medical care. It's always important to go through the routine screening, and there's a lot of controversy about what exactly should be the best screening, but I think we have a lot of evidence now internationally that good history and physicals, and particularly that history, is important. And then beyond that, and really most important, I believe, and I think we have a lot of evidence for this, is people need to understand that if someone collapses, CPR should be done immediately. AEDs should be present everywhere, and quite honestly, they're very easy to use now. And the more AEDs and the more people that do CPR, the more likely people like Wes would survive.
Now, you're telling me that these are actually portable, some of these devices, and you even carry one with you?
Well, not now, but I do. I have one that I keep in my car often when I go to kids' sporting events, and at the end of the day, these devices are small, a little bit bigger than a laptop computer. They're relatively inexpensive for a medical device, and they literally talk to you. You press the button, they start telling you what to do, you put the patches on, and they tell you if this rhythm for the patient is shockable, and if it is, they tell you to press the button. And actually, just this past weekend at Michigan Stadium, where I was, a man collapsed, a Notre Dame fan, and Michigan fans came to his aid, performed CPR, and it was just in the news this morning, shocked him, and he was doing well enough to watch the end of the game from the hospital bed.
Yeah, he's alive today, and
with
no complications following that. That's incredible.
Well, you have a free community seminar coming up on September 27th, and it can really talk about some of the topics that we're covering today. I would think that one question that parents would want to address with you is that now it's pretty much required that students get physicals before they do a school sport. Now, is that really enough to be able to know if a child or a student's at risk for something like a CA?
So that is a big question, and I'll say the answer to that is both yes and no. A good history and physical, and when I mean good, I mean seeing your pediatrician, seeing your family practice doctor, going through everything is very helpful and has been proven to screen out a lot of the worst things. At the end of the day, all this controversy about doing tests like EKGs or echocardiograms, it really, unfortunately, hasn't proven to bear fruit. And if you look at millions of kids in the United States, you'll likely come up with more false diagnoses than real diagnoses and cause a lot of undue harm. So I would say heed the warning signs, and that's really important. And honestly, I talk to my children, so any of these problems, and you really pay attention. I can't tell you how often we see someone who, a kid tells me they pass out 3 times while running track and no one does anything, and next thing you know, you diagnose a problem. I think you have to, while we all want to be worried, you can't be overly cautious, otherwise you stifle everything.
And having a good relationship with your doctor is, probably a good first step. I know that I'm the parent of 3 athletes, 2 are in college now, but I have 1 in middle school, and every year we do that physical form, and so many people line up at the school, and a doctor comes in, and you go through maybe 50 kids in a 2-hour block. Maybe not enough.
Yeah, I agree. And the good news in the state of Michigan is we actually had the Michigan High School Athletic Association has a form that has to be filled out. And up until this past year, there were questions on there about polio, about things that haven't existed for so long, and it was really outdated. And finally, they've updated this form to really encompass the important questions that we need to ask. And I'll leave it up for individual physicians and schools to decide how best to screen students. But I would argue that having a one-on-one relationship with a physician probably makes the most sense.
Yeah, so again, we just want to remind people you have a free community seminar coming up on the 27th. I believe that starts at 6:30.
6:30 at the Meyer Gardens.
Okay, great.
And we're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, and so people should probably sign up too, because I know it's going to fill up very fast.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you so much for sharing. Really important topic. Great information.
Thank you.